Oh, hi there. I'm surprised to see that you're still here, milling around. I have a new idea, if you have a moment. An idea that will hopefully get me watching a few more movies and editing my little videos faster. You see, I have a lot of films on my watch list, and I thought to myself, what better way to watch them all than with you, dear listener? So please, join me in a new little series that I would like to call Tales from the Backlog. First film up on the list is... Sorry, that was a dumb joke. Dead Silence. Good old James Wan flick back in 2007, and unfortunately it ain't all that great, which ain't really news to some, but truth be told, it had potential, just kind of failed in every department. The premise essentially is everyday schlub Jamie has a beautiful wife who he loves very, very much, and one day he decides to go grab some food for both of them, only to have a mysterious package
delivered,
which is a puppet.
It doesn't even say where it's from.
Which kinda might ruin the mood later. As he's gone, lo and behold, the puppet goes to town on the poor little gal, and our good friend Jamie has to travel back to his hometown to try to figure out what the is going on, all while being pursued by the most obnoxiously steadfast detective you could possibly imagine. The biggest problem with the film, unfortunately, is its pacing and story, because each scene just seems to exist to give Jamie like a little helping spoonful of information about what the mystery is, and then goes to another place and investigates the next spoonful, and so on and so on. And all while he's doing this, that detective I mentioned, who I forgot to mention is played by Donnie Wahlberg, who is my favorite Wahlberg. Sorry, I forgot Mark Wahlberg existed. He's my second favorite Wahlberg, playing the super duper determined detective who doesn't have any information but got a gut feeling deep inside. And he believes that Jamie, who despite the fact went to a restaurant that probably used a receipt-based system and maybe a security camera or two, still believes that he magically teleported to kill his wife and the puppet is just some weird kink that they have. Each time that Jamie figures something out, there's always like a 50-50 chance that the dummy's gonna wake up and be possessed and not do anything scary, but just kind of look around while the music treats it as scary. Or Donnie, the good old detective, will just pop out of the bushes saying, "I know you did it, motherfucker. I know you killed your wife." That's every single time he gets a spoonful of story. It's pretty great. Unfortunately, each story beat has just been covered in many other films with more creative approaches, and which is a shame. The whole idea of Jamie having the puppet in his possession, trying to figure out, okay, so I'm not trying to get rid of the puppet, I'm trying to figure out who made the puppet, maybe break the curse, despite the fact that he just puts the puppet like in a chair in his hotel room. And even though he has a sneaking suspicion that the puppet killed his wife, but ignoring that, the premise of him going back home is clever, but it never goes anywhere. It's an engaging take, but it never amounts to anything. The film really plays it safe. There's no serious gore or good creeping dread or anything like that, it just hints at it. There are eventually scenes later on that have good intentions and hint at something better, but more often than not, it's just PG-13 levels of, ooh, this could be scary, but you ain't seeing it. The worst part is the color correction. The sets that they use are really nice, actually. They're ornate, have a bunch of detail in them, definitely a lot of time and effort went into like the props of each scene, but it doesn't really matter because everything's painted this really sick blue, which I guess makes it a little Silent Hilly, but not really. It's just gross. It feels like a cheap film. And the final nail in the coffin is the big, scary twist at the end, because there sure as shit better be a twist if Jamie's gonna drive all the way out to his childhood home. The twist doesn't matter that much. It sounds good on paper, but implementation's just off. But at the end of the day, I didn't really hate my time with the film. Like I said, there is potential here, which is, I would say, better than a complete failure. Will I watch it again? Probably. I am kind of a sucker for the whole mysterious town covered in fog that's on a harbor with a little lighthouse. Like, seriously, lighthouses are the best. Go to Michigan, there's a lot of lighthouses there. Seriously, like, Lighthouse and Brand Upon the Brain are the best films ever because of lighthouses, man. They're so cool. 5 out of 10. So next up on the chopping block is David Croenberg's 1996 controversial to say the least masterpiece, Crash. I've been looking forward to this film for what seems like ages, and I have to give a shout out to my homies over at Criterion for releasing this restoration. It looks absolutely fantastic. So finally, and I mean finally, I can watch a bunch of mentally and physically damaged people fuck their brains out in cars. Yes. But unfortunately, Crash did not do it for me. In fact, it really didn't do it for me. The film stars James Spader as James Ballard, in fact. James Ballard and his wife, Catherine, decide to have an open marriage, and they each, to the best of their abilities, try to have sex in the most unflattering and unromantic places possible. Unfortunately, neither of them
can get off,
to be blunt, and both aren't happy in this open marriage. But don't worry, listener, don't worry. James decides to look at fucking storyboards while driving because, they don't have phones back then to text on while driving, and smashes his goddamn car into another goddamn car, killing the driver, stone cold dead. In the hospital, James meets Vaughn, played by Elias Cortez.
Elias Cortez.
In the hospital, James meets Vaughn, played by
Elias Cortez,
who shows James and Catherine a little naughty subsect of people who get sexually aroused and bond over car crashes and car crash wounds and anything car crash related. Crash, the film, not that one, the other one, focuses on just that. Crashes. The way the film captures cars and the wounds that result from an entire vehicle collapsing on you are absolutely beautifully done, truly. And it feels horrific in every possible way. Twisted iron coffins that were once a luxury sedan, cramped into this tiny little space in an impound lot, foot-long scars sneaking around a pair of dainty, feminine legs. The shots themselves really capture this sad, lonely uncertainty that the characters in the film feel after being in car crashes, after losing people in car crashes, now being physically and mentally handicapped. And that reflects in so many of the camera angles. Some of the best scenes in the film are these wide-angle shots of James and Catherine sitting on their balcony watching the highway. And it's this beautiful wide shot with these tiny, tiny little matchbox cars driving along the veins of the interstate. It just feels so lonely and empty, and it really does a fantastic job at capturing that feeling. But unfortunately, while the film nails its feeling, and the technical side of it is great, here comes the damning hammer. Everything I just said happens. He gets in a car crash and goes to the hospital, and James and Catherine discover their little kinky subsect, but that's all that happens. The idea of a group of car crash fetishists is fascinating.
I want really big tits.
But they're kind of just that, fetishists.
Out to here.
There is a fantastic scene earlier on in the film at a racetrack that gives Vaughn, the charismatic phantom that sneaks around and selects these people, these newly brutalized, battered patients, and shows them that maybe this tragedy could be beneficial to them.
Maybe it can be sexy, maybe it can be rejuvenating. And that scene gives Vaughn character.
Okay, that's awesome. What happens next? Let me just check the notes here. Oh yeah, okay, so James has sex with somebody in a car. Okay, what's next? Well, James chases his wife around in a car, and she's in a car, and they're both on the highway, swerving through traffic and shit, and then they The golden idea of physically and mentally change from a car crash and channeling that into revival, that golden idea never blossoms into anything. At the end of the day, it almost feels like a concept film. And it has a great hook, but the story just keeps banging the drum on, and that's exactly what Crash feels like.
That's true.
As mentioned earlier, James Spader and Elias Cortez are absolutely fantastic in the film, especially James Spader. His performance alone might make the film worth price of admission, but truth be told, the pace of the script and just a story that refuses to get out of the passenger seat and stop playing with the cigarette lighter kind of makes this whole drive to wherever the film wants to go not even worth the gas. I would say the cinematography is like an air freshener, right? And it's hanging in a really smelly Taurus, and you can never ever get that smell out, but the film just kind of pitter-patters like an air freshener. 6 out of 10. Well, that concludes our first little roundup. While we didn't exactly find pay dirt with these first 2 entries, I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm glad I watched them, and I'm glad you watched this video, dear friend. While the films weren't great, I can definitely say without a shadow of a doubt the company sure was, and I cannot wait to see you on the next episode of Tales from the Backlog.